Hello, this is Mike from Dimensional Walking, and today we're going to talk about a really interesting subject, and we're going to title this episode Hidden Vortex, Fairy Swarms, Fairy Folk. So, so fairies, good folk, wee folk, people of peace, very fair-skinned beings are all terms that are used for fairies when talking about fairies or reading about fairies. It describes these amazing small beings in appearance that also have these supernatural powers. They fly, of course, they can cast spells and possibly even influence the future. They have been said to shapeshift into other animals such as deer, birds, especially birds of prey such as hawks and eagles, and squirrels even. So always be aware of those little creatures if they come around you. They could be actually fairies. So their behavior ranges from peaceful to mischievous and sometimes even evil and devilish. It's reported that the devilish type behavior kind of came many hundreds of years ago with the invasion of the Christians into pagan Europe. At that time, some of the pagans, of course, worshipped these fairies, and that was always to the dismay of the new sheriffs in town or the new religious leaders in town. So, over my 50 years or so, studying the paranormal, I've come across some lucky people that have seen fairies, and I'll talk about my own experiences at the end. But anyways, and I've always said to people, you have a better chance of seeing a fairy or having an encounter with a fairy, fairy folk, than you would to see a gray alien. And I guess I get this from the hundreds of interviews I've done with alien abductions people and contactees and all the other people that have seen fairies. So, anyways, with that said, also a lot of the research I've done that has to deal with fairies and wee people, etc., had to do with small children. Parents would come to me and say, "Hey, Mike, what do you know about fairies or wee people or all these different terms?" And I said, "Well, I know something about it. I've talked to quite a few people." And they said, "Well, my child, he's 5 years old, 4 years old. He's seeing these little, I guess, fairies." And I always said to him, "Hey, when you're that young, your mind is wide open. It hasn't been molded by culture. As we get older, that's what happens, and our minds are not as open. Children have this open mind." And I always tell their parents, do not discourage them. Do not discourage them. Because this is quite an amazing experience, and they should be encouraged to embrace it and not fear it. So I'm going to tell you now a kind of a modern tale, a couple modern tales about fairies. So a friend of mine had, this is years ago, had come back from a trip in northeastern Washington State. And he met a really wonderful retired couple that had come to this area which they like to hike in. And they took a different path this time. There was a kind of a trail, and they said they'd never gone down this particular trail. And I think the reason they were discouraged because it looked like it was a very dense area, with a lot of woods and forests and very dark in there. But this particular time they went ahead and took this walk down this trail. And they walked in there probably 2 to 3 miles, they thought. And then they came upon a clearing. They could see the clearing from a distance, okay? And they saw this clearing. And the first glance, it looked like it was like there were these waves of, what would I say, heat. When you're on a highway and you see these waves of heat, that's what it looked like. But this was at quite a distance. I I think he said it was probably seemed to be a distance of maybe a half a mile, a little bit more. They saw this kind of rippling or this heat, or like water vapor in the air. But as it got closer, it looked like maybe they were seeing like a swarm of mosquitoes. And then as they got closer, they kind of looked like they were seeing bumblebees. Okay, and it kept on getting a little bit bigger as they got a little closer. So anyways, they got in there, and then of course it sort of looked like hummingbirds and etc. And then when they got real close, so then they realized this is something completely different. And I think one of the comments was there, every hair on their body stood straight up, because then they realized it was something completely different. Okay? And then on top of it all of a sudden, there was this 1 foot, they estimated size at 1 foot. It was this fairy creature was right in their face, basically, and looking at them and just staring at them, both of them. They said it was absolutely incredible. And it had the wings, it had its typical wings, and the body was kind of humanish. The face was not ugly, but not pretty. It was kind of in between, kind of a bigger than normal nose, if it was a human, proportioned to the rest of the face. And it was just looking at them. And there was no fear at all. They had this very peaceful feeling about the situation. And then suddenly, all around came all of these other fairies. Okay? They were just flying around. It almost felt like they wanted to play, have a good time. But they said thousands, but then later they said, well, maybe it was 100 or so, but it was just so overwhelming that it just seems like they were everywhere, and they were swarming. They were swarming everywhere. And just as suddenly as it kind of happened, this whole event happened, it ended. They don't know why it ended, but it ended. And they felt sorry about it. They wanted it to continue. But it didn't. They just disappeared, basically, and left the area. So anyways, that was a swarm I wanted to tell you about. I think, and my friend said he felt pretty strongly it was a really solid story. The people seemed to be very, he didn't know the people directly, but he had a friend that, had heard of the story and directed him to talk to them. So, and he felt, his friend also felt that this couple was legitimate because he personally knew them, and he felt strongly about it. So I just want to let you know that we feel the source is a reliable source. Now, I will tell you this. The interesting thing about it is, years later, I went there to this location, okay? But the weird thing about it is this whole area was bought up by some government agency. There was a fence there, a high fence. It said, no trespassing. Really put all kinds of warnings on the fence itself. Don't come in here. This is a government agency, blah, blah, blah. I wish I would have took a picture of what it said exactly. But anyways, for some reason, that area was off limits, and we don't know why. I mean, we could speculate and say because of the fairies. Who knows? Maybe not. But anyways, it was kind of strange. We'd go there. I was really looking forward to getting in there and seeing if we could find the path that these people the retired couple had gone down. But we didn't get an opportunity. We weren't going to push our luck here on this situation because it looked like it was a serious infraction if you went in there. I think they even said on there, they were talking about $5,000 fine or something for coming on the property or something. I've never seen that before, but yeah. Although I did, let me tell you this. Now I think about it, I did see a sign when we were outside of Dugaway, Utah, where the base is there. We did run across some signs. Rainbow and I ran across some signs very similar to that sign I'm talking about. That has all these crazy warnings on it. And if you look in that direction, the world's going to come to an end for you type signs. So anyways, so I thought that was really, really cool. Now, And a little bit of a personal side note, I had, when I lived in Albuquerque, and I've talked about this before, I used to go up on Sandia Mountain and would take Vortex photography. And I've talked about that. I won't be able to go into all that. But anyways, I had taken some Vortex photography, and I had gotten a couple fairies in the grass. I've gotten fairies under some logs by a creek up there, and I also got a fairy. I call her the Queen Fairy Mother. I got a picture of her face, and you can see all those if you go to Truth Seeker Forum and put in the search bucket Vortex or Vortex Photography. I don't know which one. I think either one of them will probably get it, but try one or the other or both. And you should get a series of photos that I took of various things that are dealing with Vortex photography. But you should be able to find these different fairy pictures in there. I think you will enjoy if you'd like to go there. It's fine. So anyways, the other thing is we live in Oregon now. And in Oregon, we have around our house, we have probably, gee whiz, I don't know, 7 or 8 fairy circles that we made out of rock. And we put little trinkets in it because, we're always told that fairies like shiny, sparkly stuff, right? So there's been times where both of us, Rainbow and I, were out there. We have gardens in there. And so we, we're watering the plants in there. And all of a sudden, out of the corner eye, it's happened several times to both of us, we would see something, wings, and a large, probably at least 6-8 inches, bigger than a hummingbird, but smaller than a bird, a regular bird, somewhere's in between, maybe 6 inches, maybe 8 inches, whatever. And we always do think that it's fairies. It may not be, but it's pretty strange anyway. So listen, with all that said, I always like to say, sleep tight, and make sure your dreams are filled of beautiful fairy folk. Anyways, with all that said, bye-bye. We'll see you.